He shoved his disreputable hat an inch farther back upon his disreputable head. "And I," said God, "but not bad enough." "That stuff again," Sweeney said. God grinned a little. He said, "It's true, Sweeney. You know it is." He pulled a crumpled package of cigarettes from his pocket, gave one to Sweeney, and lighted one himself. Sweeney dragged deeply at the fag. He stared at the sleeping figure on the bench across from him, then lifted his eyes a little to the lights of Clark Street beyond. His eyes were a bit blurry from the drink. The lights looked haloed, but he knew they weren't. There wasn't a breath of breeze. He felt hot and sweaty, like the park, like the city. He took his hat off and fanned himself with it. Then some three-quarter drunken impulse made him hold the hat still and stare at it. It had been a new hat 3 weeks ago. He'd bought it while he was still working at the Blade. Now it looked like nothing on earth. It had been run over by an auto, it had rolled in a muddy gutter, it had been sat on and stepped on. It looked like Sweeney felt. He said, "God," and he wasn't talking to Godfrey. Neither, for that matter, was he talking to anyone else. He put the hat back on his head. He said, "I wish I could sleep." He stood up. "Going to walk a few blocks. Come along?" "And lose the bench?" God wanted to know. "Nah, I guess I'll go to sleep, Sweeney. See you around." God eased himself over sidewise onto the bench, resting his head in the curve of his arm. Sweeney grunted and walked out the path to Clark Street. He swayed a little, but not much. He walked across the night, south on Clark Street, past Chicago Avenue. He passed taverns and wished he had the price of a drink. A cop coming toward him said, "Hi, Sweeney," and Sweeney said, "Hi, Pete," but kept on walking. And he thought about one of Godfrey's pet theories, and he thought the old bastard's right. You can get anything you want if you want it badly enough. He could easily have hit Pete for half a check or even $1 if he'd wanted a drink that bad. Maybe tomorrow he'd want one that bad. Not yet, although he felt like a violin's E string that was tuned too tight. Damn it, why hadn't he stopped Pete? He needed a drink. He needed about 6 more shots, or say half a pint, and that would put him over the hump and he could sleep. When had he slept last? He tried to think back, but things were foggy. It had been in an areaway on Huron, over near the L, and it had been at night. But had it been last night, or the night before, or the night before that? What had he done yesterday? He passed Huron, Erie. He thought maybe if he walked on down to the Loop, some of the boys from the Blade would be hanging out in the place on Randolph and he could borrow something there. Had he been there yet this time? This drunk? Damn the fog in his brain. And how far gone was he now? Did he still look all right to go into the place on Randolph? He watched along the windows for a mirrored one and found it. He looked at himself and decided he didn't look too bad, too far gone. His hat was out of shape and he didn't have a necktie and his suit was baggy naturally. But then he stepped closer and wished he hadn't, because that was too close, and he really saw himself. Bleary red eyes, a beard that must be at least 3 days, maybe 4, and the horrible dirtiness of his shirt collar. It had been a white shirt a week ago, and he saw the stains on his suit. He looked away and started walking again. He knew now he couldn't look up any of the boys from the paper, not at this stage. Earlier on a drunk, yes, when he still looked all right. Or maybe later, when he didn't care how he looked. And with the realization that he inevitably would do just that a few days from now, he started swearing to himself as he walked, hating himself, hating everything and everybody because he hated himself. He walked across Ontario Street, across the night. He was swearing aloud as he walked, but didn't know he was doing it. He thought, the great Sweeney walking across the night, and tried to throw his thoughts out of perspective, but they wouldn't throw. Looking into the mirror had been bad. But worse than that, now that he was thinking about himself, he could smell himself, the stale sweat of his body. He hadn't been out of the clothes he was wearing since